Well, hey all, and welcome back. So today I have a very special review. I have the new Siege War for Cybertron Optimus Prime figure. And I wanted to do sort of a different review this time. Rather than focusing solely on that figure, I'm going to make this more of a comparison video. And so, starting off, before we jump into the figure, let's just quickly go over the boxes. I want to show this to you guys. They have really uniformed the style of their packaging this time. It's really tied the brand together. I think it's really great for what they're doing. But we have the new box sizes. This is Leader, Larger Class, and Deluxe. This is Optimus Prime's box. They are all largely the same, except they have a different side illustration showing the character inside. On the back, we have the art for them. And one thing that really stands out to me I was looking at today is I don't see the bios like we used to have, which is fine because that sort of leaves it up to the media that's produced around the figures or the characters to define the character rather than having a contrasting bio on the box versus the comics versus the videos or whatever else they're doing for this. So anyway, these are the boxes. That's enough about them. Get these out of the way. And then we're left with 3 figures here. And there will be more, but I want to jump into vehicle mode really quick about this. And I feel like these are probably the 3 prime ones, no pun intended, that we want to talk about. Of course, we have G1 here, which is going to be a brilliant figure. I've always loved it. I will always love it. It is sort of the keystone of dialogue for comparing Transformers or Optimus Prime figures. And this is the Classics Prime. Classics Prime, I feel like, has always been the peak of the vehicle mode for Optimus Prime. I think they did an excellent job, not with just the transformation, but with the final mode. Even to this day, we still sacrifice vehicle mode to have a really nice Optimus Prime figure. Even on a masterpiece level, while it is close to perfect, does have its flaws. So looking at the scale here, this one falls in between these two. And this, of course, being the biggest. And quickly to show the G1 trailer, there is no hitch on this figure. And when you put the trailer in there, you know, even if you just arrest it, it's going to be at an angle, so it is not scaled to work with that. I don't know if we'll ever see a trailer or a battle station or something they come up with down the road, but that does not work in case you were curious. Didn't work with Classics either, but most likely if you had a Classics trailer, there's a better chance it will be able to rest on this one. But we do have these 2 pegs here. Not sure what function they will serve. Perhaps something coming up to go with the line. But I do think there is potential here. Now, one thing that definitely stands out are these 2 are Earth modes. This is a Cybertron mode. Now, I'm not entirely clear if this is a post-Earth return to Cybertron mode, which would make sense, being that it looks like a semi-truck that's been sort of changed over, or if it is supposed to be this is what he looked like before he came to Earth. This is his space semi. Either way, it is not an Earth mode. However, if you look at the details here, if you look underneath these lights here, you can actually see Earth lights. And I have seen people actually cut this piece off, which reveals a more Earth-looking truck. Honestly, I don't. This is a prediction, and I may be very wrong on this, but my prediction is this and Ultra Magnus and perhaps others will get a retool Earth mode. And I think that's going to be in lines with this entire piece here is actually his backpack. If they change out that piece and possibly, they could even leave this alone, but if possibly redesign these arm bits here and the wheels and the back panel, this could be an Earth version. So that's my prediction. We might see Earth modes down the road. We may not, depending on how popular the line is and how much they want to cut corners. But these really lend themselves to easily being retooled and getting a whole other figure they could market with. So anyway, that's these vehicle modes. And he is a pretty clean vehicle for the most part. I think the transformation is pretty clever. The closest thing to him might be the Make Toys Thunder Manus, or Striker Manus, actually. Now, rather than focusing on transformation, which, by the way, is brilliant in this figure. I mean, this is the most advanced transformation I've seen for a while. I would like to focus more on aesthetic and design and comparison between the other ones because that's going to take enough time as it is. So here we have our G1 incarnation, we have the Siege version, and we have Classics. And looking at these 3 in this mode, there's definitely a standout winner, I believe, at least in my opinion. Classics will always be great. Classics is a great design. It's a great aesthetic. It is very primitive in comparison with some of the technology that's going on, or at least the engineering in this new Optimus Prime. There's definitely signs of contrapposto in this figure where he can have weight on one leg. Looks like that there's sort of a life to the figure where we don't have any ankle tilt or any other of these nice modern features in here. Plus, his forearms are the big sacrifice in the Classics version because they're a shell for the vehicle mode. It's a clever design. It was good for the time, but it's not perfect. It's still a great figure. It's definitely worthy of one's collection, but as you can see here, it's definitely shown its age. Now, there are some standout things. Of course, the back of the legs I like better on this one, but because of this really clever transformation we have here, that is something definitely worth letting slide, seeing how that works. Biggest gripe about this mode is a backpack. The backpack is something I think if this does get a remake or change to Earth mode that we'll see a change of. There is a mushroom peg in this backpack. Now there's not a lot of clearance, but you can see here there's a mushroom peg. If you can find a way to clear this joint, which you might have to take this pin out to do it, you could make it to where the backpack could be popped on and off, and this would definitely be a much better looking figure. You can see how clean the back is back here, and there's room for the joints. Figure-wise, though, that's my only gripe. One thing that might stand out to people that they may not like at first glance are these forearms. However, I think, one, the transformation of these forearms is brilliant, and two, look how they harken back to the original G1 design. We've got the way the arch goes through here. It works in the same way. It fits in the same place. There's a new clever way of converting to a headlight. And honestly, if they produce an Earth version, I will double dip because this is such a solid figure. Though I do wish there would be a bigger separation in this imaginary prediction that I have. However, I do feel this is something really great here. As far as robot mode, I do believe this new figure stands out among modern Optimuses. A couple things I do want to go over. So I do have this backpack for my G1 Optimus, and it has a peg here. And most of the Siege figures actually have a backpack peg. However, this is the first one I've gotten where there's two rather than one in the center. So that keeps you from being able to use this, which would have been a nice addition considering I already have it. Not a common issue people will have, but that's just something that stood out to me since I already have the accessory. Now I want to speak about the weapons. So we have, set them out here first, just to kind of tie them together. So this is the original G1 rifle. There were two versions of it, from my understanding. This is the Classics, which is a clever concept, the way it transforms into it. Never was a super great looking weapon, though I thought it was fine. This was the one that I was never a huge fan of. I just hated that it was parts forming. It turns into airfoil, it's on the top. It was clever use of materials. I just was never in love with it. But looking at this new Siege Blaster, it's got the same basic silhouette of the original. It really captures it, puts the handle in the right place. While the first one is more detailed and nicer, and if you do have it or have extras, you can make it fit in his hand. It's not perfect, and of course, he doesn't hold it. It's actually supposed to be holding it, so that is goofy, but it is a nice looking rifle, and he can barely hold it due to the way it clears, if you're at all curious about that. But this is a good looking gun. It is a bit hollow in some parts, but it's not terrible, and it is definitely acceptable considering what else you're getting in this figure. Next, I want to get into where he actually fits within the Siege line, and some comparisons within that. So here we have our deluxe figures. They seem like a proper height for Optimus Prime, and that I think is one thing that this line is trying to do is uniform, sort of a scale across the board. One thing you'll notice is that leader Ultra Magnus is a little shorter. He's beefier, definitely, and his face actually is a little bit more masterpiece looking. They're not the exact same head. Actually, nothing about these figures are the same. Even though they look very similar, which I think is a good way to handle it, they're not the same. So it's sort of like saying we can have an inner Ultra Magnus that does resemble Prime, but they're not the same mold, they're not the same core bot, they just look similar. And on that note, one thing I wanted to try, let's get Hound out of the way. We've got Cog. If you're going to collect this line, Cog is a must because he is definitely an accessory for this line. And this Optimus Prime is loaded with ports. We have a port here on the legs. We have 2 ports on the feet, port on the forearm. Of course, his hands can hold. Shoulder port, 2 ports in the back. And if you want to modify or disconnect this, you could probably use it as a weapons platform that you could angle and consider it that way. Make that part of the gimmick. So he is definitely something that can be fully loaded up with this figure. And that is something, if you're going to collect this line, definitely get a Cog. But the thing I want to talk about definitely is the differences between these 2 molds. They have very similar transforming mechanisms as far as the feet go. The heads, not so much. Actually, you know what? They're really not the same at all. Other than slightly looking alike, there's nothing really similar about these guys. And one of the things I wanted to test was I wanted to see if Ultra Magnus' armor could work on him. Because I thought, okay, maybe we can get an Earth mode Ultra Magnus, which, even with this mold, I think they could easily retool a couple parts to be in Earth mode. And we have some parts that look very, very similar. Those shoulders, they look almost the same, but they're not. The legs are somewhat similar, but they're not. So if you're wanting to combine this, so note that due to this overhang of the forearm armors will not fit. Due to the length of the backpack, this will not fit. It could rest on there, but does not fit. The shoulder armors can kind of rest on there because they're generally the same shape, but they're not tight enough so they can just rest. That's about the only piece that actually sort of kind of fits. As far as legs go, if you look inside here, you can see that the leg is a different thickness. I did reconfigure the legs with some twisting and some partial transformation, and I did get them to sort of kind of fit, but it was not anything that would hold together. The armor does not work. However, these 2 do look great together when Ultra Magnus has his armor on there. It's really neat that, of course, you can take the armor off and they look like they could be brothers, but definitely with the armor on there, we have a very modern G1 aesthetic, though not truly G1 alt modes. I think they go great together. I'm loving this line so far. We're going to jump into many more comparisons and see if this guy really fits in your collection. Now here I want to show, since this is a possible reboot G1 Optimus Prime, still in Cybertronian mode, or had returned to Cybertron, I want to see which of these Orion packs has lended themselves to making this sort of the evolution of Prime. And I feel like, in my personal opinion, I'm really leaning towards the Titan's Return one. I think he has a great aesthetic. I think he has a fair scale that goes with it. This one, of course, looks the most screen accurate and works. However, being an Evolution Prime and really not having an alt mode and being meant to incorporate in the Evolution Prime, it's not going to work for me. I think it looks close if you put them next to each other. I do think he's a little too big to really have that sort of Evolution feel. I think this guy fits their best scale. However, this one, I feel like definitely has an aesthetic that could really sell going with it because he has a little bit more detail and fine line work. I think that sort of lends himself. Just something out there if you guys want to display them together or find something that sort of shows your evolution of Prime and you don't have an evolution figure, these 2 figures kind of go with it pretty well. But continuing the theme of Cybertronian modes, we have these guys here. And of course, none of them really scale together. They don't really work. If you're looking for something to show evolution or just a replacement for a Cybertronian mode, these are all strong figures on their own. Some people actually hate this figure. I like it because I've always liked the design. But anyway, this is just another way of looking at it is, do you think this fits as your Cybertronian Optimus Prime or an evolution of that Cybertronian figure? What is neat to see is there are all these elements in those other figures that definitely harken back to Optimus Prime. There's definitely a relationship showing itself there. And for this comparison, I want to consider alternate, which makes it a far better robot, but the vehicle mode is still garbage on it, sad to say. But these are just other options if you had classic Primes, how they fit in the scale, and if you think it would work for this line. I personally still think this is a really solid approach on their part with Siege. And here I want to take other recent incarnations of Optimus Prime from modern lines and see how they sort of compare across the board. So here we have Titan's Return, Voyager Optimus Prime, who is roughly the same size, shoulder to shoulder, but it has a smaller head. Mine has the Action Master add-on kit from Toy Hacks, so it's not the typical one you normally saw, but it is the same scale. If you flip the shoulders up, he'll be a little taller, but they're roughly very similar in size. And maybe even moving parts, considering this one's a triple changer and this one is not. There's a lot more transformation going on in the Siege version. Then on the right, we have the Magnus Prime, or Super Generi, or Power Master Optimus Prime from Titan's Return line. And he does scale well with him. I feel like even though he's much bigger, the aesthetic isn't quite there, but they do scale well together. And just so you guys know, I did pull the truck mode off. It's not going to fit. They're actually kind of close in size. The Siege one is a little bit bigger, but there's just not a way that Siege Optimus Prime could transform to fit inside that area as a Power Master option to pull the trailer. And then of course we have the Evolution one, which we saw the Orion packs from already, and this is the Combined Optimus mode. This is sort of a Optimus Prime Masterpiece Light as far as detail goes, the head sculpt, all that. When you compare these two figures, when you have the Siege next to it, honestly, I feel like the Siege is a better figure. So if you did miss out on this one on the right, it is a cool gimmick. It is cool that you can take Optimus Prime from one mode and transfer to another. The ankles kind of suck as far as design goes because they're not covered. And of course the truck mode is really wonky to sort of sacrifice for all these other things it has. The gray hands are kind of strange and they're not posable. It's a pretty solid figure. It's cool to have on its own. I don't feel like it fits in the line at all scale-wise or anything else. I think it's just really a cool collector's piece. So if you missed out on it and you feel like you might want this in its place, I think this is the better buy. I think this one will fit better within other things. Far more posable, has a much better robot mode, hides all the parts better. I think it's even more playable because this sort of, I just feel like it has a little bit looser tolerances as far as posability and things like that. It's still a great figure, but if you are hunting for it and you feel like this could definitely stand in, I vote for this. And I want to do one final comparison. This Prime also comes with an axe I didn't talk about because, one, I got carried away with the other stuff, and it's okay. It's not the greatest. It transforms. It kind of reminds me of Animated Prime, but it gets held by the base of the handle. I'd rather it get held up here, which is a little bit more natural. It's just an okay weapon. His blaster, I think, is far superior as far as something that comes with it, but it's nice to have accessories. Nothing wrong with that. And the reason I feel like these comparisons are something that need to be talked about are two reasons. One, I think this is a huge step by Hasbro towards third-party quality as far as engineering goes and aesthetic. This is considered one of the most posable Primes made. And this guy, he has so many great things in the ankles, double swivel. He has this really sharp knee bend. He has good arm posability. He's got the flaps that come up on the shoulder so he can get his arm all the way up like that. Head's on a ball joint, which, I mean, that one has the same kind of head articulation. This one has waist rotation, which has been so limited on so many Transformers, especially ones with blocky chests like an Optimus Prime. This guy is very dynamic. Probably the only thing that might hold him back is the lack of a toe bend going forward. But you could still fake it, especially if you mess around with the toes like that. This is definitely a step up. And on top of that is the clever transformation. So this is a Cybertronian semi-truck, just like this guy is. They actually have a couple of very similar transformation characteristics, especially the way these wheels come up into the chest and all that stuff. The arms have panels, but they work in their own interesting way. This is something, if you don't have Stryker Manus, which he is an awesome figure. He's probably one of my top Primes, even though visually I have other Primes that I like better. This one's just awesome in certain aesthetics and posability. Siege is really going after this. This is something, if you haven't gotten a third party yet and you kind of want to dip your toes into it, this Prime right here is your entrance. This is something, and if Hasbro keeps this up with this articulation, this clever transformation, and these great aesthetics, you might not need to go third party, at least for certain characters like this Optimus Prime. Now, looking around here, of course, this Manus has some better detail, some better paint, some more gimmicks, but in that same respect, it's another $50 for this figure. And that's if you can find it. I'm not sure if there's many still around or if they've gone higher on the secondhand market. But something to consider for what you want to get into. So we have a more G1 interpretation of a Cybertronian Optimus Prime, and then we have a sort of really creative license with the character. And to wrap things up, I just want to show you guys this Optimus Prime in sort of a loaded up mode. I've got a couple weapons, from Super Jinrai, and I've taken Cog and I've thrown them all over the place. So you can use Cog as sort of a riding platform. If you had two, you could have Cogger skates or roller skates if they make a roller repaint. And all in all, I think he's an excellent figure. I'm going to go ahead and throw my gripes in there, just because I think it's necessary to talk about. This chest panel is sometimes tricky to sort of get sewed up enough. There is going to be always a little bit of a gap. Not a huge thing. That is, I know, a pet peeve of some people. The lack of a center port. These leg panels here don't really hold on super great all the time. I feel like the more you transform them, the more you move them, the little less secure they become. I may kind of play with that a little bit more and see if I can fasten them a little bit better. And really, this is something that is just an aesthetic thing, that is, if it's what you're into or not, is the Cybertronian semi-truck mode. I think that is something that's not for everyone. If you're into customization or possibly waiting for third party, this could be easily rectified. If someone made a new backpack that changed how it interacted with the front end, it actually could be an Earth mode Optimus Prime very easily, even if you left those little front bumper cannons that he has. But as far as paint goes, detail, articulation, transformation, robot mode aesthetic, play factor, this guy's awesome. If this is your thing, if you like messing with your Transformers and you like this look, definitely go hunt him down. I think right now he's hitting toy shelves. Let us know in the comments below if you think this Optimus Prime fits in your collection anyway, or is even worthy of your collection. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.